Hello everyone. In this lecture, we will be discussing about practical implementation of Pandas using Python. Python data analytics library, which is in short called as Pandas, is considered to be one of the very prominent library in Python, especially while we are dealing with data analytics and all this related stuff. This is because if you see, there are various other libraries which can even handle various tasks like manipulation of data or else loading of data or else loading of Excel files, documents or so. But why Pandas is considered to be best? Because Pandas has various functions which helps us deal with data very easily. We'll be able to access the data easily, we'll be able to manipulate the data easily, we'll be able to perform various operations on the data very easily using Pandas when compared to any other libraries. That is why Pandas is considered to be one of the very prominent library. So first of all, let us try to import the files that we had actually uploaded in the Google Drive. So first of all, I am using the function of google.collab, and in that function I am using /content/drive, force underscore remote equal to 2. This is the standard code for every one of us to provide authentication to the Google Drive. Once I execute this code, the Google Drive authentication will be done and you will be arriving at a point where you will be asked mounted at /content/drive. That means that your authentication to Google Drive is completed and you will be able to access the files that are present at the point of /content/drive. After authentication, let us try to read some files that are present in the Google Drive. So before we try to read the files, let me show you what exactly are the files that are present. So let me move to the Google Drive. So in this Google Drive, this is the actual file what we will be dealing with. The file name is president_country_candidate.csv. So this file is actually related to the US president elections of 2020, and we will be having the data related to each county and the vote secured by a candidate at a particular time. Let me close these files, and this is the folder where I had placed my file. The folder name is dataset, and I had got my files from Kaggle, and the repository is called as US elections 2020. So if we execute the code, you can see the type of object that we get once we load the data is the Pandas data frame. As we had discussed earlier, while we are discussing about the theoretical concepts, I had already told you that whatever data we load using the Pandas, it will be loaded in the form of a Pandas data frame. Okay, so if we move much further, let us try to concentrate on some topics called understanding the data, manipulating the data, and performing some mathematical operations on the data. These three are considered to be the important applications of Pandas while we deal with the data. First of all, let us move on to understanding the data. So we have loaded our data in the form of a data frame. So let us see what exactly is the shape of the data frame. So what does shape give you? So shape gives you to see how many rows and columns are present in that particular data frame. Okay, so if we run this data, so it will be given out that there will be around 31,213 rows and 6 columns. So even we are dealing with the NumPy arrays, we will be having shape function which gives the shape of the NumPy array. What does the shape give is, shape usually gives the dimension of that particular object. It might be a Pandas data frame or else it might be a NumPy array. So let us actually see what exactly is present in this data frame. Okay, we had loaded the data frame and we are seeing the shape of the data frame. So we are able to understand the dimension of that particular data frame. But we should see what exactly the data is present in that particular data frame also. For that, I am using a function called as head. Okay, so let me run this code. So you will be able to see that the data present right here is of columns, state, country, candidate, party, total votes, and 1, either true or false. Okay, so right here, if you see, you can only see the 5 columns right here. But as I had shown you earlier, so this is our actual file. So if you see this file, there are only around 6 columns present, but the total number of rows present are somewhat large. Even if you see from our shape function, you can see around 31,213 rows present. But if we execute df.head function, we are getting only 5 rows. This is because df.head gives us just only first 5 rows present in your particular data. If you just want to get more amount of rows, just give whatever number of rows you require. For example, if you need 15 rows from the data set, just give df.head of 15. So if we execute this code, you will be able to see that the first 15 rows present in the particular data set will be displayed. So this is how the df.head function will work, so that you will be able to understand what actually is present in the particular data frame. So if we move on, so let us see a similar function called as tail function. So what does the tail function do? It performs a similar functionality as that of a head function. So in the head function, we will be getting only first 5 rows of the particular data frame. If we use the tail function, you will be getting the last 5 rows of the data frame. Right here inside the tail function, what I had passed, I had actually passed 10. So what does this 10 do? It will be giving last 10 rows. Instead of giving the last 5 rows, it will be giving last 10 rows. So if I execute this code, you can see output as follows. So you can see the state, country, candidate, party, total votes and one either true or false. And you can see these are the columns. So if you see this is the last column present, so the index of this column is 31,212. Okay, so and from the shape what we got the same. We got the total number of rows present are 31,213. Okay, we are starting with 0 and we are ending with 31,212. So we got understood what exactly is present in the data frame. So instead of knowing what exactly is present in the entire data frame, for example, if you want to just understand about only some columns present in the data frame, so then there is no need to get all these values of all the columns, right? State, country, candidate, party, votes or one. Just take the values what you need. Right here I am just taking the values like country, candidate and one. So I am getting the values of only these 3 columns. Okay, so if I execute this code for head of 10, so we will be getting the 10 rows. Okay, so and the 10 rows will be consisting of only columns of country, candidate and one. Okay, so make sure you keep the brackets correctly. I am using the 2 brackets instead of using the 1 bracket. Okay, so 2 square brackets should be used if you want to pass the name of the particular column. So this is how we use the head function somewhat differently. So similarly you can even use the tail function for getting the last rows of a particular set of columns instead of using all the columns. If we move much further, let us see what are all the columns present. So instead of going with the head to display all the data present, let us try to get only the names of columns. So for that I am using a function called as df.columns. It will return an object which will be something similar to that of list, which consists of all the names of columns that are present. So that is how the df.columns function will work. And there is also another function called as unique function. So what does this unique function do? As the name itself says, unique function helps us to identify the unique values that are present. So if we run, so you'll be able to see these are all the unique values that are present in the particular column called as candidate. So previously if you see how I had accessed the column, I had accessed the column by using df of column name. So right here I am accessing by using df.column name. So you can either access the column in these 2 ways, df of column name or df.column name, based upon the need or at that particular point. We are able to get all the names of unique candidates present in this particular column of candidate column. Okay, so this is how the unique function will work for a pandas data frame. So let us see the next function called as count function. So if I execute this code, you can be able to see that this count function will give the total number of rows present in all the columns that are present in the particular data frame. So you might be thinking, why we need the count? Because we had already seen earlier the shape function which gives the shape of that particular data frame. So actually we can get the total number of rows present from the shape function. Then why do we need this count function? This is because each and every column might have some null values present. Right now in this particular data set we don't have any null values, but we can see some empty columns also. Those empty columns are considered to be null values. So what does this count value will help us is, it will help us to see how many actually not null values are present. Okay, so this will eliminate the count of null values and we will be able to see only count of not null values by using this count function. And there is one more function called as info function. So what does this info function will do is, this will give information of all the pandas data frame object. It will give the name of all the columns that are present. It will give all the not null values counts. It will be giving the data type of all the columns. So we'll be able to see that we got columns called as state with the particular number of not null values, with a data type called as object. We got something like a total word, something like a 1 with the data type of boolean. Okay, so this is how the information will be given to us by using the function called as df.info. So this is how the various functions of Python will help us to understand the data. So I had actually told you before that to perform any task of machine learning or data analytics, the first thing what we have to do is collect the data, and the second thing what we have to do is understand the data. So these are all the Python functions which will help us to understand the data. So if we move much further into the third step, so what can we do? So we have collected the data, we had understood the data, so we had to perform some manipulations on the data as per our requirement. Okay, so because we can't actually send the raw data into our machine learning models or deep learning models or whatever it is. So we have to understand the data and we have to manipulate that particular data to remove all the unrequired things and to make the data useful and much cleaner. Okay, so there are various functions in pandas which helps us to manipulate the data. We will be seeing first function called as rename function. So what does this rename function will do is, it will help us to rename the name of the columns present in the particular data set also. First of all, let me run this code and let me explain you what actually happens. So I'm actually using another code block to actually display what exactly the data frame is present after doing this function. So if you see right here, you can see the name of the column as 1 is being replaced to win right here. Okay, so this is because I'm using a function called as rename, which actually takes two arguments. Okay, so first argument is columns equal to, so this is actually key value pair which will be consisting of key as the past name of the particular column and value as the new name of the particular column. And the second argument is in place equal to true. So this will be making sure that our original data frame what actually is present is being replaced. For example, if you doesn't want original data frame to be changed and if you want to get a new data frame which actually consisting of column of win instead of 1, then just replace this in place equal to true with false. Okay, so what does this do is, this will replace our existing data frame with that of this particular change in column name and it will return the value. Okay, so this is what it happens. Previously if you give in place equal to true, it will not return any value, it will just modify the previously existing data frame. If we move much further and if we see that there is another function called as fill_na. So fill_na is considered to be one of the very important function in pandas because there will be very large number of null values present in a particular data set also. Right here the data set what I am using doesn't consist of any null values, but in general use case while we are dealing with very large amount of data to train our machine learning and deep learning models, you will be generally finding the data sets which consists of very large number of null values also. So generally we follow various kinds of procedures to actually deal with this null values problem. We might remove those null values, we might replace those null values with some values or others. There are various techniques to do that. I don't want to go much further with dealing with the null values also. If required, I will be able to provide some resources for you which actually helps you to remove those null values or to deal with those null values. For now, let us see with the fill_na function. So what does this fill_na function will do is, it will replace all the null values present, or else it will replace with all the empty cells present in the particular data set or else in the particular data frame with the value that is given. That is, all the null values present in our data frame will be replaced with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But what specifically I have given right here? So what I have given is all the null values present in this particular column of country should be replaced. Okay, so you can go with either replacement of either entire data frame or else you can go with the replacement of only some specific columns based upon your requirement, because in certain use cases you might be needed to access the data, so which is actually present in the particular column, and you need to modify the data for each column separately. So in that case you can go with column by column, or else if you just want to modify the data all at once, you can go with all at once by using DataFrame.fillNA. Okay, so let me run this code. You can't see much modification or change in data, so this is because our data set isn't consisting of any null values. So if you actually are willing, you can actually take up a data set which consists of null values, and you can try it over the null function. If we move on, so there is another function called as replace function. Okay, so what is fillNA function doing? FillNA function is actually also replacing. So it is actually replacing the null values to a particular value. So actual replace function, what will it do is, it will be replacing the values of a particular thing. That is, if we give a particular value, it will be replacing it to some other value also. So right here what I am doing is, I am replacing all the true values that are present in the data set to that of S. That is, for example, in the win column you got the true values right here. Okay, so all these are being replaced to that of S. Okay, so let me run this code, and after this let me print df.head. Okay, if I print df.head, you will be able to observe that all the true values are being modified to S. Similarly, you can use df.replace to modify all the false values present in the particular data set to that of yes. Okay, so to that of no actually. Okay, so we are giving true to S, we are giving false to no. So let me run this code. So and let me run the head again. So you will be able to see that all the false values that are being present are being replaced to no. So this is how the replace function works. Okay, so we should be using this replace function and fillNA function very carefully, so that we will be able to get better results while we are dealing with data and while we are manipulating the data. Okay, so then let us move on to the part of performing some mathematical operations on the data. So performing some mathematical operations on data is quite simple. There is no much difficulty in performing that. Just we have to give that particular column name or else the particular data frame along with that particular name of the function. Okay, so let me run this code for you. So let me uncomment this and let me run this code. So this is called as a sum function. So what does this function do is, this will be performing the sum of the values present in the particular column, or else if you want to do, you can do it with all the columns present in the data frame. So if I run this code, okay, so you'll be able to see that for the total votes column, okay, so there is a column called as total votes. For this column, so we got the value of 15641826 as the total sum. For example, instead of going with the total votes column, if you just want sum for all the columns, so if I run this code, you will be able to see that we will be getting the sum for all the columns. So you can see for the country column or else for the state column, for the candidate column, so we got all the strings right here. So what is the sum function doing is, it is just adding up of all the strings. So even in the previous modules we had seen how we can actually add two strings together, that is concatenation of two strings. So that is how sum function will work. So we got another function called as max function. So what does this max function do is, so it will be actually giving maximum value of each and every column. So right here we will be getting, for the state column we will be getting this is the value, for the county column we will be getting this as the value, for the candidate this is the value. Okay, likewise for the total votes this is the value. Likewise for each and every column, so what are all the maximum values present in each and every column, we will be getting those values. Okay, so if you see all these functions, you might have already got a doubt that what is this x is equal to 0. Okay, so if we give x is equal to 0, generally the operation will be performed in the column wise. Okay, so instead, just if you want to get the operation to be performed row wise, just give it as sum x is equal to 1. Okay, so if we run this code, so we can be able to see that, so this is how the operation is performed row wise. Okay, so if you see among all the rows, the columns that consist of only the integer values or else the numerical values will be considered. Okay, right here only the column of total votes is consisting of numerical values, so that is considered so that we will be able to see sum only as 44,552 for the first one, then 41,009 for the second one, and so on. So that is how sum function will be performed row wise. Similarly, you can do max function also row wise. So now let me move on to the another function called as mean function. So as the name itself says, it helps us to perform mean of all the values that are present in the particular column. So if you run this code, you will be able to see that. So this is the mean of total words. So right here we can't actually perform the mean for the string columns. Okay, so that is why you got the mean value for only the total words. So similarly, if you see the standard deviation, so you can see the standard deviation for the column of total words. So if we move much further, we can even do the mean, median, or standard deviation, or whatever it is for whatever columns we want. For example, right here I am actually performing it in specific to the total words. Okay, total underscore words. So if I run this code, so you'll be able to see that this is the standard deviation what I got for the total words. For example, instead of giving the total words, if you just give something like county, okay, so county actually got strings. So let us see what happens. So I'm giving some string column and asking it to find standard deviation for that particular string column. Okay, so let me run this code and check. So what are you getting right here? We got some error called as value error. So why this happened is, you can't actually ask the Python function to do a standard deviation on a string object. So that is why this error had occurred. So if we move much further, so we'll be able to see the last function called as describe function. Okay, so describe function is considered to be very important function because it gives us all the values that we want. Rather than going with the sum, rather than going with the mean, median, standard deviation, or whatever it is, there is no need to do all that separately. So it gives us all the values all at once. So if you execute the code, okay, so for what are all the columns it is applicable, it will be giving the count, mean, median, standard deviation, minimum value, what is the 25% of it, what is the 50% of it, what is the 75% of it, and what is the maximum value. So that is how describe function will work. So right here in our data set, we got only one column of total words. But if you take somewhat larger data sets or more numeric data sets, we will be finding some very large number of columns which actually consisting of these all count, mean, median. Now this is all about the practical implementation of Pandas. Right now in this present lecture, we have covered only very few functions of Pandas. But actually there are very large number of functions in Pandas which actually help us to deal with the data. So there is a small exercise for you right now. So try to take up any other data set rather than what I had used, and try to apply all these functions on that dataset and practice the Pandas library. That's it guys for today's lecture. Let us meet in the next lecture.